Hi everybody, I'm Justin from Main Man Bassing. In this video, I'm going to talk about the strike zone and how it relates to bass fishing. If you're new to the channel, I do product reviews, fishing adventures, and how-to videos that all revolve around bass fishing in the Northeast. If you're into fishing, I'd love to have you to hit that subscribe button. I will also link up in the description box a downloadable format of The Big Bass Zone by Bill Siementhal and Michael Jones. Bill Siementhal is a freshwater Hall of Fame angler, and at the time that book was written, he had caught over 100 double-digit bass. So everything I've learned about the strike zone, I've basically learned from this guy, and I highly recommend that book. So that'll be in the description box. And what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to talk quickly as possible about what the strike zone isn't and what it is. And then I've got some video where I catch some bass. I'm going to break down everything for you, explaining what it is I'm talking about. So, strike zone, what it is not. Contrary to popular belief, it is not the distance a bass is willing to travel to strike a lure. Okay, you hear this a lot. There's a large strike zone or a small strike zone. And usually what people are talking about what they're saying with a large strike zone is that you can get away with a horizontal presentation, right? So you can get away with a swim bait that swims, and the bass is tracking the swim bait a long distance before it strikes it. Or if it's a small strike zone, people say, well, you got to use like a wacky worm or a jig or a drop shot to put it right in front of their face because they have a small strike zone and they're not willing to travel far. That is not what a strike zone is. That has, in my opinion, has absolutely nothing to do with what a strike zone is. What a strike zone is an area whereby a lure is presented will have a high probability of convincing a bass that it will succeed at catching prey. Okay, that's the whole key to bass fishing, is to convince the bass that it will be successful. Bass are opportunistic feeders. A lot of people talk about that. I don't think they know what they're talking about though. So so let me say it again. A strike zone is an area whereby a lure is presented will have a high probability of convincing a bass that it will be successful at catching prey. Okay, because bass they're top of the food chain hunters, right? So it's all conditioning. They don't even really think about it, right? And so the strike zone usually revolves around a piece of structure, and structure is any piece of hard surface, dock piling, cinder block, concrete slab, piece of timber, a tire, anything with a hard surface, right? And near that structure, if you have submerged cover, such as grass and shadows, or you have wind, even better. If there's forage there, even better. Any general area that is habitable by bass, increases the likelihood that you'll catch one, right? But there's two main reasons that the structure is so important. One is that the structure eliminates escape avenues of the prey. So if you think about a dam wall, right, and you've got a bluegill swimming towards a dam wall, and let's say a bass keys in on it and it's tracking it, well, and let's say this dam wall is near the shore. So by the time the bluegill gets to the dam wall and it realizes it's being tracked, it really can't go left to escape because the shoreline's right there. It can't go up. It can't go forward. It can only go right or down. So the bass, by the bass tracking the bluegill to the dam wall, has increased the probability, the likelihood that it will be successful at catching prey. Okay, because the dam wall limits the escape avenues of the prey, and that's why it's an opportunistic situation. And that's why the bass will key in on it, because it has a very high probability that it will be successful. And so again, the whole idea is to convince the bass that it's succeeding. All right. So one reason, the structure limits the escape avenues of a prey, right? The other reason is that bass actually feed on it. And if you YouTube feeding my pet bass, and you kind of have to scroll through the videos, but you'll find videos of people dropping crayfish or crawdads into a tank, right? And the crawdads swim to the bottom or sink to the bottom, and that bass just hammer them on the bottom. Well, Usually what happens next is that the bass takes it to an area in the tank with a hard surface, or, which I find absolutely fascinating, is that it takes it to a corner of the tank, right? But then it starts spitting out and eating the prey, spitting out and eating, spitting out and eating, spitting out and eating. And it's doing a couple of things. It's clearing all the pebbles and the silt and the dirt out of the mouth, right, out of the oral cavity. It's probably also disorientating the prey, but it's also keeping it right there in case the prey's alive. It's sort of pinning it there so that the prey can't escape, right? And then it's probably also setting up efficient digestion, right? And if you think about it, you probably cut, eat, and chew steak the same exact way every time, because your body's conditioned itself to digest that piece of steak as efficiently as possible and get the maximum amount of nutrients as quickly as possible out of it, right? And so the bass is no different. But those are the two reasons that structures is so huge. They have such an important role in catching bass. So what you want to do is you want to find structure, whether it be off the bank, submerged on the bank, or on the middle of the lake, maybe near a hump or something. You want to cast past that piece of structure, right? And let's back up a little bit. If the structure has wind cover, submerged cover, like shadows and grass, and forage, even better. Anything that will increase the chance that a bass lives in the area will give you a higher probability of catching a bass. But anyways, the structure is the target, and you want to cast past it, right? And then you want to bring your lure towards it. And you're casting past it for a couple of reasons. One is that let's say there's a bass on that piece of structure, right? Well, if you cast past, it'll give it a chance to recognize the bait and then set up an attack or ambush, okay? But there might not be a bass on that structure. It's just a potential structure. Until it's struck, it's only potential. But there could be bass elsewhere, right? That can key in, they'll hear it, they'll see it, they'll key in on it, and then they'll start tracking it. And as they track it, they'll start to understand and recognize that it's in an opportunistic area where there's a piece of structure that will limit its escape. And so it will give the bass it'll convince the bass that it has a high chance of succeeding at catching prey. And so it's kind of conditioned at that point to attack the bass. And that's how you're going to catch more bass, because bass have conditioned themselves to feed this way. All right. And the more pieces of structure you can line up in one cast, the better, right? So I'll jump into some video now and I'll explain exactly what I'm talking about. First clip, let me break it down, right? To the left of me in the red oval, that's going to be a main lake point, and that's like that finger that extends out into the main lake. And then I'm coming into a cove in the flatlands, and right in front of me is a shallow ridge. It's like, think of like a spine, and that's going to extend to the right about 60-75 feet into that flatland. And on either side of that ridge, it tapers off to like 4 feet. And then on the back end of the ridge, you have like dark ground, you have a little bit of grass, and a little bit of shadow from the sun. And so I'm casting out as far as I can for a couple different reasons. I know there's boulders and logs out there in the cove, and so I'm hoping maybe I can run my lure over that and maybe get a strike out there. But if I don't, I want to pull these bass off their spot and bring it to this. You see this boulder sticking up right in front of my reel. I want them to track it so that they recognize there's a massive strike zone. All that structure of that ridge is this massive strike zone. That's where they want it, because they want to bash that bait up against that structure, and for other reasons too. But I'm putting the lure where the bass want it. All right, right here, my lure is the white circle, and my target strike zone is the boulder in red here. And keep this in mind for every clip that follows. By bringing the lure to that strike zone, you're restricting or limiting the bait's escape routes. It can't go forward, and it really can't go to its right, because
it's super shallow there, right? So, and if the bass is if the bass is behind it, assume the bass is behind it. It can't go behind. It can't turn around because the bass is right there. So really, the only escape route for the prey, the bait, is to its left. And so, therefore, you're limiting its escape routes and you're increasing the bass's chance of successfully catching that prey, right? So you're setting the bass up for success. So keep that in mind in every clip that I show you. You're limiting, by bringing it to structure, you're limiting the escape routes for the prey and making the predator more successful, giving it a higher chance to catch its prey.
You can see here my lure's on the left. I'm bringing it to that boulder because that's where the bass wants it. It wants to strike it right in front of that boulder and bash it, and then or cover its attack, or when it does attack it, use that hard structure to aid in the digestion of the bait.
Like this. Oof.
So it's pretty good, like spawn, post spawn.
Nice one. Flat bait.
Alright, so this is a giant. We're in pre-spawn here. That white circle is my target. In front of that, you can see that little finger, that point that sticks out, but also to the right of me, that is it's a mainline point. And then in front of the circle and in front of that finger that sticks out, in front of that is a cove. And then also way to the right of me is a cove too. But my target is that that boulder protruding, that little point that sticks out into the water about 2-3 feet, and I cast. That's where the bass wants it. That's where I'm gonna put it, set it up for success. And it's pre-spawn, and I could have run over a bed, but take note of that because that's where they set up beds, those giants. So you can replicate that all, throughout pre-spawn. I get hit right on that boulder.
Who is the big one? This is a big one. Let's look at this.
Just a giant. That's a Maine giant.
Big one.
You don't see many people in Maine pulling up bass this big.
Pre-spawn, bye girl.
All right, different lake, pre-spawn. I'm just on a bank, but like behind that white circle is a cove, right? And the land by the white circle, that's my target. It's kind of like a point. It's not a big one, but it's a point. And then whatever it is, it's like a ramp or something, but then there's some boulder in front of that. It acts as like another point, right? And so I'm just casting past that. I'm bringing that lure to the point. That's where the bass wants it. So it can either cover its attack or bash the bait against a hard surface, or use it to aid digestion, for efficient digestion. But, and again, pre-spawn, could have run over a bed, I don't know. But if so, like, take note, because they're setting up on these points pre-spawn.
This one, you see that? It looks like a little ramp. That's what I'm aiming for. That's the point.
I get hit right off that point.
That to the
and
right,
it's just like you can just replicate it over and over again. It's so cool. You just start calling your shots. Like if I'm gonna get hit, I'm gonna get hit on these points right here. And so you want to cast parallel as much as possible, or uphill, and then bring your bait past your target, your little point or protrusion, and then you're drawing these fish to. You're drawing in the fish to the bait, so that, and then they recognize that there's a strike zone in front of them, right? That's what they want. They want a strike zone.
Wow.
So you give it to them.
This one's nice. Come here, girl. Oh, Jesus. Wow.
Just
Wow.
another giant, and I'm just replicating that pattern. I did it with a couple
Wow.
other big fish too.
Wow. Look at that. Gotta get it.
All right, let me break this down. This is really cool. Dudes and chicks, when you get good at this, you'll be able to call your spots. You can replicate this over and over and over again. And so to the left of me is a main leg point. Again, it's like a finger that sticks out and tapers down into the main leg floor, drops off into the main leg floor. But my two targets are these little, I call them points, you can call them sub points. They're really just structure, but they start from the top of the bank and they extend to like 2 or 3 feet in the water. And again, what I'm trying to do is pull bass off their spots so that they track this bait, and I'm putting it right where they want it. They want it against these hard surfaces. So for multiple reasons, like cover their attack, you can bash the bait and then use that hard surface to aid in efficient digestion. So I'm just putting the bait where they want it, and I'm setting the bass up for success. It's exactly where they want it. You can replicate this over and over and over again. Sometimes you get dinks, sometimes you get chunks, sometimes you get mid-sized bass, and sometimes you get absolute giants. And you really want to look for, like what I'm focusing on right now is looking for points that extend into flats. You'll see here, I'll pause it. Watch where I get hit. Right there, I zoomed up for you. Look where I got hit, right in front of that. That was my first target, pulling the lure in. And that's where I got hit. And I'm telling you, you can do this over and over again. Start calling your shots. And but keep in mind, the important thing is that the bass wants it there. That's why you put it there. You don't put it there because you think the bass is there. You know, I don't know where that bass came from. I might have pulled it off its spot, but it's setting up there, and that's where it's attacking because that's where it wants. So you're setting the bass up for success.
You're pulling bass off their spot, and they're tracking your lure, and you're bringing them to your target because that's what they're going to recognize as the perfect spot to bash your bait. So you're setting them up for success and what they want to do.
I just put that back reel on. I don't like, that's another thing I learned from Bill Simmental. I just don't like drag. I don't like fumbling around with drag. Put the back reel on, it gives you complete control of the fight. I'll put drag on a lot of times on smallmouth. When I'm about to net them.
I'll take it. I'll take it. Little bass and a big bass swat.
That basically concludes the video. Remember, you're looking for a piece of structure, whether it's you're on the main leg floor or whether you're on a bank, right? You want to cast past the structure, whether it's above water or it's submerged. You cast past it. Even better if there's some submerged cover, such as grass and shadows, wind cover, and forage. Okay, and the more potential strike zone structures that you can line up in one cast, the higher a chance that you'll catch a bass if there's bass in that area. Link in the description box. Highly recommend this book. Read it. It's revolutionary, really, in my opinion. Nobody's really talking about this stuff. And that's it. So I hope this helped. I hope it gave you good perspective. And I hope you catch a real big bass soon. Thank you. Subscribe. Have a great fishing season.